Welcome to the 700 Club. This morning, Israeli Special Forces rescued 2 hostages in a daring raid in the city of Rafah. The operation raises hopes that even more hostages can be freed.
Israeli intelligence is gathering critical information as it takes more Hamas territory. Chris Mitchell reports from Jerusalem.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu welcomed the dual Israeli-Argentinian citizens home and congratulated the rescue team. "I salute our brave soldiers for their bold action, which brought about their release. Only continued military pressure until a complete victory will bring about the release of all of our hostages." IDF spokesman Daniel Hagari said the operation relied on high-value intelligence and their forces waited for the right moment.
This is an operation we've been preparing for some time. The necessary preparations have been made, and we were waiting for the conditions that will allow it to be put into operation.
Within hours, the 2 rescued hostages were back with their families.
Luckily for us as a family, they were saved tonight, but I must say that the job is not done. We are happy today, but it's not we didn't win. It's just another step towards bringing all the other 134 hostages back home.
The rescue inside Rafah highlights the high-stakes confrontation over the city. Israel wants to pursue thousands of Hamas terrorists in Rafah, but the White House says the operation shouldn't go forward without a plan to protect the 1 million civilians sheltering there. Netanyahu told ABC News Israel has a plan.
We're not cavalier about this. This is part of our war effort to get civilians out of harm's way. It's part of Hamas's effort to keep them in harm's way. But we've so far succeeded, and we're going to succeed again. Those who say that under no circumstances should we enter Rafah are basically saying, lose the war. Keep Hamas there.
On Saturday, the IDF revealed a Hamas tunnel complex directly under UNRWA's main headquarters in the Gaza Strip. It found evidence UNRWA supplied the tunnel with electricity, as well as large quantities of weapons inside the UNRWA building, including rifles, ammunition, grenades, and explosives. The IDF also found documents showing Hamas terrorists used UNRWA offices. After the discovery, Israel's UN ambassador Gilan tweeted on X, "Every day we find more proof that in Gaza, the UN equals Hamas and vice versa." Israel's defense minister Yoav Gallant said the IDF has entered the most sensitive Hamas locations, and they're using Hamas's own intelligence against them. He says the more they advance, the closer Israel is getting to a deal to free the hostages. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
It's certainly wonderful news that hostages were rescued. Let's continue to pray that all of them can come home and come home quickly. Let's continue to put the pressure where it needs to be put on Hamas. Hamas is the reason there's a war. Hamas is the reason civilians in Gaza are at risk. Until Hamas unconditionally surrenders, gives up all the hostages, lays down their arms, Israel has to keep the pressure on. Hamas can't exist anymore, and I'll add to it, the UN is a disgrace on this. UNRWA should not exist anymore. It should stop all funding. The U.S. government has said we suspended funding. It should be eliminated. No more. If you're going to use our tax dollars to sponsor terrorism, you don't get to do it again. Well, in other news, gunfire erupted inside one of America's biggest churches Sunday. It's like the violence has just been unleashed so many different places. Ephraim Graham has that story and more from the CBN Newsroom. Ephraim?
Gordon, a shooting at Joel Osteen's Lakewood Church in Houston injured 2 people before 2 off-duty police officers took down the shooter. Police are praising their quick response for preventing a greater tragedy. CBN's Dale Hurd reports.
This video shows a Spanish broadcast from Lakewood Church shortly before an afternoon service. Then the shooting began. Houston police say a woman in her early 30s and wearing a trench coat entered Lakewood Church with a rifle and a backpack and immediately opened fire.
I was just walking up the stairs, and when I got on the top, like, they started shooting. I don't know, like, I just heard, but it was like more than 10 shots.
They were repetitive, boom, 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 and I yelled, "Mom!"
2 off-duty police officers working at the church shot and killed the attacker. A young boy between 4 and 5 years of age who was with the female shooter was hit by gunfire and was listed in critical condition overnight at a Houston area hospital. A 57-year-old man in the church was shot in the leg and is also being treated.
That female, that suspect, put that baby in danger. I'm gonna put that blame on her.
Police say before the shooter died, she claimed to have a bomb, but officers say no explosives were found. Pastor Joel Osteen praised the swift actions of law enforcement and said the church is praying for the victims and the shooter's family.
Of course, we're devastated. We're going to pray for that little 5-year-old boy and pray for the lady that was deceased, her family and all, and the other gentlemen. There are forces of evil, but the forces that are for us, the forces of God, are stronger than that. So we're going to keep going strong and just, doing what God's called us to do, lift people up and give hope to the world.
Dale Hurd, CBN News.
Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin is back in the hospital. Doctors admitted him to Walter Reed in Bethesda, Maryland, Sunday afternoon. He is in the critical care unit for treatment of an emergent bladder issue. The secretary has transferred the functions and duties of his office to Deputy Kathleen Hicks. Last month, Austin faced heavy criticism for not alerting the White House or his deputy of an extended hospital stay following complications from prostate cancer surgery. The World Health Organization is warning of future global pandemics, and it's pressing member nations, including the U.S., to sign on to a treaty giving the organization broader authority. But as Lori Johnson reports, the WHO's questionable decision-making during COVID is raising some red flags.
WHO Director General Tedros Ghebreyesus suggests the next pandemic could be possibly more deadly than COVID-19.
And anything happening is a matter of when, not if. So we need to have a placeholder for that, for the disease we don't know that may come. And that was when we gave the name Disease X.
Given his concern, Tedros wants countries worldwide to sign a legally binding agreement full of rules and regulations giving the WHO expanded authority. This 32-page document is the most recent draft of the so-called pandemic treaty that the World Health Organization promotes as a way for poorer countries to receive the same level of health care as wealthier ones. Some Capitol Hill lawmakers have major concerns about this push, including the WHO's handling of China's role at the beginning of the coronavirus pandemic.
The WHO denied that COVID-19 was spread via human-to-human transmission, based entirely upon the word of the Chinese government, the CCP. And I think maybe most appalling is the WHO even delayed naming the pandemic a public health emergency of international concern because the CCP confirmed that the spread of the virus was, quote, under control.
Others charge it would use U.S. tax dollars to fund certain health policies worldwide.
You know, WHO has lost its way. I used to ask them, I've been here 44 years, year in and year out, where do you stand on abortion? They'd say, agnostic, we don't do anything on it. And now they have become the most aggressive promoters of abortion in the world. They have and it's embedded in this treaty.
The Family Research Council's Tony Perkins calls the treaty a progressive power grab.
The draft agreement is first and foremost a global, political, economic, and social manifesto
that threatens U.S. sovereignty.
Few Americans, save those who desire to exercise control over the lives of others, would want to see another pandemic like COVID-19 and the government response that followed that pandemic.
Given the scope, critics say this amounts to a treaty and should be put to a vote in the U.S. Senate.
The WHO refuses to call the pandemic treaty a treaty. It calls it an agreement, an accord, a framework, anything else, likely because it does not want it to be submitted to the treaty process in the United States and worldwide.
Another major sticking point is that approval would allow vaccines, treatments, tests, and other information to be shared.
The draft would require parties to support time-bound waivers to intellectual property and use WHO TRIPS provisions to override intellectual property rights, which will curtail future investment in health research, which is exactly the opposite you would want to respond effectively to a future pandemic.
Experts say that information sharing could be a deal breaker for the U.S. and other nations. WHO leaders have set a May deadline for the document's approval. Lori Johnson, CBN News.
I want to turn now to Las Vegas and Super Bowl 58, where the Kansas City Chiefs scored a huge win Sunday night, capturing their second consecutive NFL championship with a thrilling 25-22 victory in overtime, becoming the first team in 19 years to win back-to-back Super Bowls and their third in 5 years. Chiefs quarterback Patrick Mahomes won the Most Valuable Player award and said his team is looking to win a third straight title next year. Kansas City kicker Harrison Butker set a Super Bowl record with a 57-yard field goal. At the Super Bowl Media Day, he told reporters, "I never thought I'd ever be on a stage like this, but here I am, and I need to glorify God for that." What an incredible game. Gordon?
It was an incredible game. Congratulations to Kansas City and condolences to all the San Francisco fans. But it was quite a game and quite a contest, and certainly kept me up late last night.
It was worthy of staying up for.
It was. But I was disappointed. I was expecting Travis and Taylor to get engaged on the 50-yard line afterward. Maybe the next Super Bowl.
Oh, my. Yes, maybe.